Hi everyone, I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I'm here with David Korins from Here Lies Love, the Tony-nominated scenic designer. Congratulations on this latest Tony nomination, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I was thinking of when I was thinking of talking to you and how to begin this interview, I kept going back to my first entrance into the space at Here Lies Love because I kept looking around thinking, how did he even begin? Because it is such a wild reinterpretation. I frequently didn't even know where I was. At some point, I was stationed in front of the disco ball pre-show and looked up to realize there's the proscenium, and I'm standing where the lip of the stage would be, but everything is different. You can't tell where everything was before. So, how did you start? What are the parameters for you when you even try to begin to map out this kind of concept?
Well, I'm assuming from your description that you were standing on the floor.
I certainly was, yes.
Right.
We're
So,
a dance floor person.
yeah. So interestingly, the Broadway production of Here Lies Love is actually the fifth um, iteration of our show. And so, there would be no way to be able to just start from zero, to Broadway. We needed every single step of the way to get us to Broadway. And that entire process took over almost 13 years. Uh, and it took almost 13 years to design Here Lies Love, meaning we did first, obviously, David Byrne had this amazing concept. He brought on Alex Timbers, or he was paired with Alex Timbers. Alex Timbers brought me on. And then we did a workshop at Mass MoCA in Massachusetts just to figure out whether or not we could actually kind of prove a concept that we could have people like future Sams of the world standing inside of this set and have the set wrap around the audience and, in fact, move through the audience. And we'd spent a summer workshop there. And then we did, of course, the public theater twice, London, Seattle, and onto Broadway. And each time kind of getting better and more refined of an idea. And so happily, we didn't have to just conceive of the Broadway production all at once. But it really started with this concept and it wasn't a concept that was layered on top of the show. It was literally baked into the idea of the show, right? So as opposed to, the much bandied about terms of like immersive theater, environmental theater, which by the way, I've been doing for years and years and years, and we've all been doing, right? So environmental, where you sort of treat and wrap around, decor around the theater, or even immersive, where you sometimes blur the line between audience and performer. In this instance, it is in the writing of the show, right? Here Lies Love is kind of defined by it. It's not like a traditional show where that concept gets layered on top of it. And so it's been really interesting because we knew at times the audience members, like people like you standing on the floor, and others would be cast as rioters, members of a wedding, at a funeral, people at a dance club, and that was integral to the storytelling. We needed the kind of community to be part of the show, so practically speaking, how I began to conceive of it is just like kind of beat by beat, storyboard by storyboard, figuring out moment to moment how we wanted this to work. But technically speaking, it was by far the most ambitious and complicated show, not just in my career, but that I've ever actually seen. Because in order to have 260 people sitting on the set, 315 people standing inside of the set, and another 500 looking down into it, we probably spent over 1,000 hours easily dealing with engineers and probably thousands of hours dealing with architects just to make sure that it was all safe.
Wow. Because I mean, for anyone who did not get there or needs a refresher, it is not just like the theater was dressed like a
No,
nightclub.
no.
You gutted the whole orchestra. The seats were gone. There is an entire new structure, many structures that are built into that space.
That's right. Yeah, no, we completely took out every single seat in the orchestra, but we also built a catwalk. We built a 60,000 pound steel structure that went through the floor into the basement and also, hung in a lot of ways from the actual theater, and completely, we didn't just break the fourth wall, we like obliterated it, right? As you said, you got to see kind of the etching of where the proscenium was, we completely built from basically all the way from one wall all the way to the other and all the way up, and we connected that structure to the mezzanine, right? So that there was a whole new catwalk, which then, of course, became the front row for people in the mezzanine. And then we built stages out into the mezzanine. So yeah, it was very disorienting for people who are used to kind of walking in, getting a ticket for an usher, and getting a playbill. Um, there was a lot of education, not just with people in the front of house, but the quick changes, actor traffic patterns that would normally be backstage happened shared space with audience members. Crew members were also where audience members were, and we completely blurred the line between performer and audience.
Did you get to see audience reactions a lot? I would imagine that would be a cool perk of watching everyone, like I'm sure
You
I
know,
did kind of.
100%, because what was interesting is, everything about Here Lies Love was complicated times at least four, right? The linear square feet was probably the linear feet of 4 or 5 or 6 Hamiltons, right? Just the amount of massing of it. But in order to tech the show, we set up tech tables on north, south, east, west, and we also had tech tables on wheels, and we wheeled them around the space so that we could look at the set and the design from different. Sorry, I have something going off. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
So that we could look at the pandemic. Don't we love it? Work from home, play from home. We had tech tables that were on wheels, and we had to learn how to retech the show looking in 4 directions. So yeah, we got to see audience members' reactions from every angle. And what was so amazing was there were at least 5 different ways to see the show, right? So there was sitting up on the side galleries looking down, which were amazing seats, like courtside seat at a basketball game or something, but elevated. There was that special lounge that looked across underneath. There was, of course, the upper mezzanine and the lower mezzanine. And then there was the floor. And the thing about the floor was it was the first time in the history of Broadway where we've ever had audience members standing up and moving during a show, right? We've had people sit on the stage, we've had stages come out into the audience, but we've never actually figured out how to have audience members move around. So you, as someone who stood on the floor, throughout the show got moved around. That center stage, we called it affinitively the blender, right? Because it literally moved around and rotated, and it blended the audience. And so you got to move around and see, you probably had a 360-degree view of it during the show. And that was the first on Broadway, right? And I know, we always talk about like innovation and all that. I have had such an extraordinary out-of-body experience with Here Lies Love, because Alex Timbers, the director, and I, on our first preview, we looked down at the audience and we whispered to each other, I can't believe this is happening in a Broadway theater. Like, I can't believe the Schuberts gave us the keys to the theater and entrusted us and allowed us to put this kind of thing in. And there were people standing up and dancing and moving and all that stuff. And the audience reactions were absolutely insane. With every single movement of the set, because of the complexity of the design, every single floor plan had to be individually permitted with the city of New York. So there were 38 individual floor plans that had to be permitted, because with every configuration, we had to prove that different fire exits, different fire egresses, different life safety, different ways out of the theater could be managed and then filed. It was really, really ambitious.
Wow. I want to go back because you talked about the sort of immersive, it's happening all around you aspect of it, because at some points I would be stationed, I'd be moved, so I'm looking at where the upstage wall of the stage would be, sometimes looking out towards the mezzanine or to the side. And the same kind of thing was happening even for people sitting in the mezzanine, I imagine, of
Yeah.
performers actually up on those platforms. How long did that take to figure out the mechanics of that, of truly having a performance that it's not just immersive, as in there's someone in the center and everyone watches? It is really all around you.
Well, like I said, if if we hadn't had the 4 previous productions, we never would have been able to do it. We, you know, it's a testament to the importance of the show and the quality of the kind of the size swing that we took. We took a big swing with that show. You know, the the extraordinary thing about maintaining a creative team over a decade. I mean, every single designer, choreographer, director, all of our associates, everyone stayed with the show for 12 years. And so there was so much institutional knowledge to be able to do that and figure that out. But what was so amazing about the Broadway production is because it was the biggest scale, I've never seen anywhere, even in some grand operas, I've never seen a performer standing up in a mezzanine, like in the middle of a crowd, delivering a line or singing a song to someone 100 feet away with hundreds of people in the audience kind of like underneath their gaze and between them. And what's so interesting is, like, you know, theater is all about story and all about emotion. And when you get that kind of distance and that kind of tension over that distance, the storytelling is extraordinary. And so we never got to experience Here Lies Love that big and that grand until we got into the Broadway theater. And so we were kind of resting on the previous performances and the previous productions. But when we got, especially at the end, like the Why Don't You Love Me number with Imelda kind of singing, you know, to Ferdinand, and then like her, you know, like the kind of triangulation of that moment. Even the hairs on my arms are standing up right now just thinking about it, because it really included everyone in an incredibly dynamic way. And then in the final number, you know, God Draws Straight, we kind of have this like kumbaya, everyone gathers together moment, and the sort of house lights go on. What was so amazing was the sense of community where they came out and sang that beautiful, you know, kind of acoustic number was, you know, so dramatic, because the change in complexion of the show changed so dramatically, and because everyone was so included that it was so emotional. And that only happens with that kind of scale.
Mm. It's excuse me. It's interesting to see that scale over so many different types of seating arrangements, as you said, because there is a world where this show could have been, you know, just the on-stage portion, or just that and some of the mezzanine. But there is the gallery seats, there's the little VIP box. Why was it important to you to have a huge array of different types of seating and different types of audiences like that?
Well, first of all, you know, I'm in my 40s. You know, I don't think that I would want to like show up and party on my feet necessarily, right? I mean, like I would like that for a moment, but there, for some people, sounds like for you and your husband, um, you know, they want to be down there and dance and get in the mix and all that stuff. For some people, they want to like have a traditional theater seat. They want to sit down in like a red velvet seat and watch a show and not stand up and dance. Turns out everyone always stood up and danced. Some people want to like bring a small group and pay extra money and get a bottle service like a club. And some people want to have like basically floor side, but not on the floor. And so what was interesting about just the configuration of the show is, as I kind of figured out the mechanics, we found spaces, right? Like when we built that catwalk, we didn't know anything about that VIP lounge. We didn't even contemplate it. But like when we built that catwalk and we actually realized, oh my God, there's a ton of space that used to be theater seats underneath the mezzanine. Let's go ahead and make that a VIP lounge. And there were 28 more seats, right, to be had under there. So it was important to me because not all audience members are the same. Not all thirsts for attachment of a material are the same. And I was like, you know, what we learned at the public theater is we had tons of people come and see it from the side balcony, from the galleries looking down. And they saw the people on the floor and thought, that actually looks really fun. I want to come back and see it. And by the way, we had people on the floor who would look up at the gallery people and say, oh my God, I wonder what that looks like from up there. I would like to come back. And we had many, many people come and do both. And so we knew there was real kind of purchase and having both of those options. And then as we, develop the design over years and years and years, we're like, well, more is more in this case.
Mm. And those years and years, you said it's, roughly like 13 years spent creating this to get it to Broadway. This seems like such a massive project to have in your mind while you're also working on a lot of other things, like you've done the Who's Tommy this season. How do you manage juggling multiple projects like that?
Well, it's funny, I have an unbelievable team that I work with, and in fact, my associate on the project, Amanda Stevens, worked with me since the very first time. So she's been with me for 18 years, over 18 years. I know that because my daughter is almost 19, and I met Amanda when she was 4 months old. So I met Amanda when my daughter was 4 months old, not when Amanda was 4 months old.
Right.
So when I started Here Lies Love, there was no Hamilton, there was no Beetlejuice, there was no Dear Evan Hansen, there was no any of those projects, the Who's Tommy. And by the way, Hamilton took 5.5 years, and the Who's Tommy was 5 years, and Beetlejuice was 6 years, and Here Lies Love still took twice as long as all of those. You manage it by part of it is you manage it by having a contemplative process. These things are not easy. Anyone that says making musical theater is easy has never done it. It's one of the most challenging things in the world that I've ever experienced, is making a good musical. And many of the ones that I just mentioned are great musicals, and they take a long time.
Yeah. And this is many of those ones you mentioned are you received a Tony nomination for. This is your fourth Tony nomination of your career. What does that kind of continued recognition mean to you?
I have a weird relationship with the Tony Awards. I got to be honest with you. I feel like you tell yourself it doesn't matter. It doesn't. None of these things matter. Who cares? It's about the work. It's about. And then when you get a Tony nomination and you show up in this community and you see, you have these moments with fellow Tony nominees, and I realize it's a lie to say it doesn't matter, but it matters to me for a different reason. It is so emotional. I feel like I'm tearing up right now, even as I speak about it. This is where I made my career. I do a lot of other things. I do immersive experiences and hospitality and all of the brand activations and things. But I started my career in the theater, and I will continue to work in the theater forever. And this is my home. This is my community. And so to be recognized, now 4 times with a nomination, is it's really humbling, and it is really incredibly meaningful. And I never have the right words to describe it. To be remembered for Here Lies Love, the Tony Awards is a business also, right? And it oftentimes recognizes a show that opened in the spring because it's like, out of sight, out of mind. For Here Lies Love to be remembered, it closed a long time ago. For it to be remembered, talks a lot about the way that it penetrated the market. It is one of those shows, and I can count those shows on less than 5 fingers. People come up to me frequently and say it's the most incredible experience I've ever had in the theater, period, full stop. And they say that a lot. So this one in particular is very, very sweet. I've been to the Tonys now, or been nominated 4 times, never won. And I feel like each time is a different animal, because you're part of a different show, you're part of a different experience, and a different community. But the thing that stays the same is these relationships. And it's amazing. You see these people year after year, and it's like seeing family. I mean, they're my family. So it's beautiful.
Well, I hope you look forward to another great Tony Awards ceremony this year, and congratulations again. It's wonderful work transforming that space for Here Lies Love.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that we got to talk about it. It's one of the sweetest parts of the Tony nomination, is that you get to like revisit the show, and you get to talk about the show. I've obviously had shows that have been nominated for that are still open. It's very easy to be like, oh yeah, I got a nomination for Hamilton. You can come see it. With Here Lies Love, I feel like I'm, talking about it, and it feels like I get to continue to talk about it in the present tense, even though it exists now in the past tense, and it's a really special thing.
Yes, very much indeed. Well, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you, David.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.